In today's video, you'll find out how the common Egyptian man was buried and possible proof that ancient Egyptians had access to modern technology. But first, let's take a look at a terrifying discovery by scientists inside the Great Pyramid that may hide something ghastly. The Great Void. Egypt has many pyramids, but three of them absolutely dominate the landscape. These are named Khufu, Khafre, and Menkaure. These three massive pyramids can be found on the Giza Plateau, each named after the pharaoh who had it built. The biggest one by far is Khufu's pyramid, also called the Great Pyramid of Giza. This pyramid is not only big in stature, but also in mystery. While its purpose is generally known, no one really knows what's inside of it. Of course, the simplest way of getting answers is to cut a massive hole on the side of the thing and look inside, but I feel like some people might have a few objections to doing that to one of the last remaining intact wonders of the ancient world. So, how do you look inside it without blowing it up? Well, the answer came in 2017 when scientists were able to harness the power of cosmic energy to look inside. Okay, I'm not gonna lie, that sounds like something from an MCU movie, but I'm really not kidding. They used muons, subatomic particles that are created when cosmic rays collide with the Earth's atmosphere, to look inside the Great Pyramid. Think of them like X-rays, but way more powerful. Probably give you more cancer, too. In short, scientists were able to take a peek inside the Great Pyramid using non-invasive methods, but what they found raised more questions than answers. Because inside the pyramid, along with the expected chambers, they found a great black void. Two of them, in fact. The first one being 100 feet long, with a smaller yet not really less intimidating one on beyond the north face of the structure. But what is inside these voids? Well, no one really knows, but researchers are planning to use more powerful muon scanning machines to find out. Given the penchant of ancient Egyptians to protect the preserved bodies of their dead pharaohs, these voids could contain anything, possibly booby traps laid out to catch would-be tomb raiders. Here's another scenario. What if some ancient supervirus is trapped inside these chambers, lying dormant for 1,000 years? Yeah, it's just sitting there waiting for someone to blast through the voids and unleash a plague of biblical proportions. 2022 ain't over yet, let's just get this all started. Or they may actually be voids. You know, the kind that mythologies from around the world say are doorways of the afterlife. Any one of these possibilities is scary, and although scientists really want to find out what's inside these voids, it's better that they hold off. At least until they are 100% sure that what lies inside doesn't kill us all. Again, 2022 is still young. Next, we have the Black Sarcophagus and its contents. In July of 2016, a very mysterious black sarcophagus was unearthed in one archaeological expedition in the ancient city of Alexandria. The sarcophagus was made entirely of black granite. It was also 9 feet long, 5 feet wide, and 6 feet tall. Oh, and it reportedly weighed around 30 tons, so lifting it out safely from a hole 15 feet deep wasn't really that easy. Excitement was in the air. The sarcophagus looked ancient, and many people thought that they had finally found the long-lost burial ground of Alexander the Great. Despite that excitement, it actually turns out that the sarcophagus dated back to somewhere between 304 BC and 30 BC, long after the time of Alexander. Still, its contents could still be the find of the decade. Despite of rumors of a curse floating around, curiosity won and the sarcophagus was opened. They found something alright, one more mysterious than the next, and that would be 3 skeletons. Granted, they probably used to be mummies, but as you can see, they weren't really in great condition. Experts initially believed that it was a family burial, something that's pretty rare but not uncommon practice in ancient Egypt. Later analysis did reveal that the 3 skeletons were probably that of soldiers though, as one of the skulls had a hole in it very consistent with an arrow injury. Not a very pleasant way to die, or so I'm told. Others would say otherwise though, as the hole is also similar to the hole that remains after an ancient surgical treatment known as trepanation is done. This surgery is the oldest surgical intervention ever known since prehistory, but it was rare in Egypt. See, I told you, more questions than answers, but it doesn't end there. The skeletons, when they were found, were suspended in a reddish-brown viscous liquid that smelled so bad it forced people to evacuate from the dig site when the sarcophagus was first opened. Speculation ran rampant on what the red liquid could be, and some say it was actually red mercury. And then there was another more out-there explanation that it was juice for the mummies that contained the elixir of life. Both of these theories were disproven. It was actually proven that it was indeed sewage water that seeped into the sarcophagus, and is probably the reason for the mummy's degradation into skeletons. Granted, this didn't stop people from wanting to drink the liquid though, you sickos. A petition was even set up to allow these people to partake in the liquid. The petition was started by Scottish game developer Innes McKendrick, which probably started out as a joke, but quickly took a life on its own. Kinda like Area 51. Next, we have the ancient Egyptian light bulb. Okay, what exactly is in this photo? That is a question that many say Egyptologists haven't sufficiently answered yet. This, my friends, is known as the Dendera light. So named because of its similarities with the modern light bulb, this stone relief is pointed out as evidence that it was ancient Egyptians who first used the light bulb. As you may well know, it was Thomas Edison who invented the first electric light bulb. Others say it was Tesla and Edison just stole it, but that's a whole matter for a different video. Back to ancient Egypt. The Dendera light relief was found at the temple of the Egyptian goddess Hathor at Dendera. Incidentally, this was one of the most well-preserved ancient temples in Egypt. The scene depicts what could be constructed as a bulb similar to a Crookes tube with a lotus socket at one end, a cable traveling underneath, and a snake-shaped cord filament inside. In the most popular representation of the so-called Dendera light, a priest is shown holding up the lamp, and a few smaller figures are seen below the so-called Dendera light. One of the figures appears to be directing the light bulb upwards. A two-armed Djed pillar is also shown with the bulb, and the hands are apparently connected to a snake or cord inside. A baboon is presented in front of the lamp while holding two knives in front of itself. To an Egyptologist, and me, this image is a mystery. However, to an electrical engineer, it makes perfect sense. In fact, it was actually a Norwegian electrical engineer that first proposed this image depicted an electrical lamp. Granted, this theory didn't gain traction, until Austrian authors Peter Krasse and Rainer Habeck brought the hypothesis to worldwide attention when they published a book based on the Dendera reliefs titled Light of the Pharaohs. The subtitle was High Technology and Electricity in Ancient Egypt. To add further credibility to the theory, electrical engineer W. Gam actually built a working model of the Dendera light. If indeed it's a fact that Egyptians were using light bulbs, not to mention electricity, in ancient times, it would totally rewrite all the history books. Also makes us wonder what other kinds of ancient technology existed, records of which could have been lost during the burning of the Great Library of Alexandria. Also, if this is true, advocates of the ancient alien theory would have a field day. After many years of study though, which is probably the way we should go when explaining such things, Egyptologists have put forth a more grounded explanation of the images on the relief. According to them, it's not just the image of the so-called light bulb that is to be considered, but also the writing alongside the vignettes when interpreting them. When everything does come together, the relief actually tells of an Egyptian creation myth. Whether the relief tells of how the world was created or definitive proof that electricity and artificial light isn't actually modern technology, there is no denying that the Dendera light is one of the most intriguing mysteries from ancient Egypt. Next, let's talk about the tomb builders' tombs. Ancient Egypt had a culture based on death and the afterlife. Why do you think mummification was such a booming industry there? The country is dotted with pyramids and grand tombs, most of which with even grander contents, all of which are what the dead would need in order to live a comfortable life beyond the mortal realm. And as such, we associate these tombs with royalty and the elite. But what about the common folk? You know, the people who actually built these magnificent tombs and pyramids? In fact, about 80% of the population of ancient Egypt is composed of these workmen, and yet we know much more about the few royals and nobles. Hence, there is an active effort among scholars and archaeologists to know about these skilled workmen and artisans who built these grand monuments that stood the test of time. And in 1990, they found something that would lead to this better understanding. On that year, a tourist was thrown off her horse when the animal stumbled into a mud brick wall. This unassuming wall turned out to be a previously undiscovered tomb. Excavation of the tomb revealed a long vaulted chamber with a line of several false doors that were believed to have been used as an area where the dead would commune with the living to receive offerings like a modern-day cemetery, where the living commune with their dearly departed on stone graves. Crudely drawn hieroglyphs were scrawled over these false doors that were also inscribed with the names of the dead. Behind this long hall were separate chambers where the dead were believed to have been buried. The mummies of the workers were long gone, probably sold in the black market during the illegal mummy trade boom period, and yes, that was a thing. The tomb was far less intricate nor stylized when compared to that of the pharaohs, but still the builders incorporated various pieces of granite, basalt, and diorite in the tomb's construction, suggesting the leftover material from building the more grandiose tombs were used here. Simple as they are, they weren't pedestrian by design, but rather came in different varieties. Some were in the shape of stepped domes, some were comparable to beehives in structure, and others followed the same common structure as that of the pyramids. These tombs still showed the skill of the people who built them, who were incidentally buried in them as well. Now it's time for the day's best pick. Today's pick may picture a macabre scene, but it illustrates perfectly how the ancient Egyptians value all kinds of life. They even afforded animal honors and dignity in death. The Horse and Chariot Graveyard. Unearthing remains like these might be unnerving, but after the initial shock, those who found it must have been fraught with excitement. What you're looking at is the remains of 2 horses, a chariot, and if you look closely, even a dog. The chariot was of ancient Thracian descent and was found not in Egypt, but rather in modern-day Bulgaria. It was covered in bronze, and it would have been decorated with scenes from Thracian mythology that are now difficult to see. Its exact age is uncertain and may be closer to 1800 years old. A year later, the same team who uncovered the horse and chariot found a brick tomb nearby containing the remains of a man dressed in what appears to be armor near the chariot. The man was buried with several items, including gold coins, gold rings, and a silver cup showing a depiction of the Greek god Eros. He would have been a nobleman or possibly even a ruler who lived in ancient Thrace in what is now Bulgaria. So definitely not Egyptian, but why is it on the list? Well, like ancient Thracians, ancient Egyptians loved their horses. Heck, Alexander the Great loved his horse Bucephalus above all others. Ancient Egyptians loved their horses so much, some were even treated to a human burial. In 2011, scientists unearthed the remains of a horse in Tombos in the Nile Valley. Now in present-day Sudan, Tombos was established by the Egyptians in 1450 BC as a foreign outpost in the rival kingdom of Nubia. The horse's body was then wrapped in a shroud before being carefully laid in the tomb. He was even surrounded by important objects which included the remains of an iron bridle, which hinted that the horse was a chariot horse while it was living. A tomb burial for the horse suggests that the animal probably played a significant role in its owner's household and was more than a mere beast of burden, while the iron bridle piece found in the tomb, which was a rare and expensive metal at the time, further helps it establish its elevated status. This was high enough to merit an ornate burial typically reserved for high-ranking people. Next we have Susenus I, the Silver Pharaoh. At this point, every one of us should be familiar with Pharaoh Tutankhamun, more commonly known as King Tut. The Boy King became famous not only because he was the youngest pharaoh known to have ever ruled over Egypt, but also the insane amount of gold found inside his friggin' tomb, which was discovered untouched by tomb raiders and grave robbers. What you may not know is that there was another untouched pharaoh's tomb that was discovered, but instead of being gilded in gold, this one was rich in silver, earning him the nickname the Silver Pharaoh. Susenus I is the 3rd pharaoh of the 21st dynasty of Egypt. He ruled from 1039 to 991 BC during the 3rd intermediate period of Egypt. His tomb was discovered in Tanis in 1940, and oh, what a discovery it was! His coffin was made of pure solid silver and was surrounded by treasures that easily rival that of Tutankhamun. His remarkable discovery was something that should have shaken the world of archaeology at the time, but it was cut short because of the outbreak of World War II. Thanks, Germany. Gold was the treasure of choice among the pharaohs of ancient Egypt, and it's not because they were rich and want everyone to know about it. Rather, it had something to do with their preparation for the afterlife and the belief that they, the pharaohs, will be transformed into gods when they die. Hubris, I know, but to each his own, am I right? Similar to how the sun would reappear every morning to shine on the world, they believed that gold gave the ability for a man to return to life. Being pharaoh, Susenus was the chief priest of the sun god Amun, and of course he was adorned with one of the most sophisticated golden death masks ever discovered. But why was the sarcophagus silver, though? Well, honestly, to show off. Susenus' rule over Egypt came at the time when the empire was on a big old decline. During that time, silver was a metal rarer than gold, hence perceived to be more valuable. So in an act that can only mean to show off how wealthy he still was, he ordered his sarcophagus to be made from pure silver. Aside from being the big show-off with a lot of silver, Susenus is also remembered for another thing. He was the last of the pure-blooded Egyptian pharaohs. After his death, no pure-blooded Egyptian ascended to the throne. Before we move on, I've got a little challenge for you that'll take 5 seconds to complete. So here's the deal. You just leave a like on this video, smash that subscribe button and hit the notification bell, and you will get 25 years of amazing luck. Try it, it really works. Next we have Khufu's massive boat. If what he left behind is any indication, Khufu is one pharaoh who really liked big things. In all the right places. Reminder, Top 5 Best is a family channel. After all, he did mastermind the creation of the biggest pyramid in Egypt, which incidentally is also the world's largest tomb. Probably one of the biggest manifestations of his excessiveness are the boats that he had made, one of them 144 feet long, not to use while he was alive, but rather to be buried with him upon his death. Near the base of the Great Pyramid, also Khufu's tomb, were found 5 underground chambers, and in each one of the 5 chambers are the remains of dismantled boats of various sizes. Researchers believe that this was done so that Khufu would have ships to use in his afterlife. Symbols were carved into the 1,224 pieces of the boat to denote their position and served as a guide on how to reassemble these once Khufu was in his next life. Thanks to this, it helped the modern archaeologists to reassemble it themselves. The 144-foot-long royal barge was the largest among these ships. It's shaped rather like the old Egyptian papyrus rafts, but it was made out of wood. The boat also looked like it had no mains for self-propulsion, meaning that it was made to float and be towed by other boats. The ship, however, never got to do its intended use, but rather was dismantled and buried along with the Pharaoh. Upon discovery, however, it embarked on a new journey. Researchers have painstakingly reconstructed the royal barge, not to be used but to be displayed. The 4,600-year-old ship was moved to a brand new, state-of-the-art museum in Cairo back in 2021, where it's currently on display. The aim of this project was to preserve one of the biggest and oldest organic artifacts in the history of humanity, and so that even future generations may be able to witness this marvel. See you guys next time!